I want to get your take on what's been going on just in terms of the cybersecurity angle. We've been talking about privacy with user data here. What has been your reaction to what Zuckerberg has said on the Hill over the past 2 days?
I think the big thing that's being left out is the word free. Nothing is free. Free means you are the product, and you are basically saying that Facebook can use your information. And I'm not saying they were right with the Cambridge Analytics, but the user has to accept some responsibility. If they're going to post information and not properly set their security correctly, there's got to be some user accountability in this whole process.
And what do you think that user accountability should be? I mean, what kind of changes or what do you think Facebook should do when they're in this situation in order to not only reassure the users, but then also make sure that they are held accountable as well?
Probably they need to find a balance, because right now Facebook has a lot of great security features, but they're all turned off by default. And unless you know about them, you can't turn them on. So I think Facebook shouldn't go to the extreme of turning on all the security, but I think they need to start making some of the security a default option so the user has a little more protection, and then they can open it up if they want. But now at least some of that information is more limited than it is today.
Eric, I agree with you. The users need to take responsibility for the fact that a lot of the data Facebook has on you, or arguably all of it originally, comes from you. It comes from what you choose to post. But what's been so interesting over the last few days, and I would stretch it to before the Zuckerberg testimony, maybe over the last couple of weeks, is realizing or being reminded of just how many average Americans don't understand this about Facebook. They don't stop and think, well, why is it free? Do you ever wonder why it's free? It's free because you are the product, so to speak. It's free because your usage of it, you're the one telling it and giving it all this information. Hello. Does that surprise you at all? How do you think we can better inform the public? Why is it that people for years, I mean, for a decade, they've been using Facebook and they never understood that it's a free service because it's your data that fuels their business?
Right. Exactly. And to me, it's so amazing because just before the break, I was sort of laughing at the testimony where the one congressman said, I was in my living room talking with a friend, and the next day I came on Facebook and all my ads were customized. Like Zuckerberg has hacked all the satellites and all the cell phones and listening to everyone. I'm like, okay, there's definitely some conspiracy theory. Now, there's a little truth that if you're going in and doing free posts, you're going to get targeted ads. But I think a lot of people misunderstand and really think that you are being monitored even when you're sitting alone in your living room with no electronics.
Eric, I want to ask you about the shadow profiles. That has come up a few times today, just in terms of what shadow profiles are for some of our users who don't know, is that when profiles are created to imitate another person, so if there was another Shauna Smith out there, or someone who wanted to be Shauna Smith, created a fake Shauna Smith profile, used some of my pictures, used some of my information, whether or not that is legal and what Facebook needs to do in order to better prevent this from happening again. Do you have any thoughts on that in terms of, I mean, it was almost like Mark Zuckerberg played it off that he didn't even really know to what extent it was going on.
Yeah, I think the problem there is Facebook does a lot of research and experimentation where they're taking your data and using it in different forms. Now, the problem always goes back to those user license agreements. When you signed up for Facebook, whether it was 1 year ago, 5 years ago, there was that agreement that everyone clicks I agree and has that 1-point font that nobody reads. I actually read it. And if you read it, you are actually saying that you are giving Facebook a license to use your information, analyze your information, and perform targeting advertising against you. So I personally do not think what they're doing is illegal. We get into the moral and ethical side of things. But once again, if you're giving your information to them, if you're providing your information online, you have to assume it's being used. And if you actually think all your information in a free service like Facebook is truly private, then you're very, very naive in how these companies work and become billion-dollar companies.
Yeah, speaking of naivety, Eric, you're right to say, in the terms of service, you're giving Facebook the right to use your information, as you say, a license. And yet today, in some of the testimony, we heard Mark Zuckerberg say, hey, I want to clear this up. We don't sell your data. That's not something we do. I thought that was a little dishonest. What's your take there? I mean, exactly what we are discussing with you right now, they're giving out your data to advertisers in order to better target their ads.
It's one of those fine lines, because if you look at how the average person would perceive the word sell, then yes, I agree that what Mark said might be a little misleading. But if you look at technically, I would actually agree that he's not selling it. What he's doing is connecting people together. So they're taking your data, they're using it to build a profile, and then if somebody is interested in you, they'll let ads be pushed out there. So it's sort of a gray area, but technically, if you look at what's really doing, they're selling people that align with a certain profile. They're not actually selling your data. But I do agree, it's definitely a little dancing going on.
Yeah, technicality.
And Eric, I want to get your thoughts here. We know that Facebook has been, they've been promising the fact that they will hire more people in order to combat some of these privacy issues as well as the fake news on their site. They're saying that they're upping that team to 20,000 by the end of this year. Do you think that that's enough, or that they need to do even more?
When I heard that number, I was sort of scratching my head, because just looking around, if that was true, that they could actually find 20,000 people that are dedicated 100% to cybersecurity, that would make them, out of every company on the planet, the largest security team in existence. So I think that was one where he was probably spreading it of anybody having any involvement, any work, anything doing with cybersecurity or data privacy. They want to increase the team. But that was probably the one thing that I thought was probably over-exaggerated, a little miscommunicated in terms of what he really meant by hiring 20,000 pure-play cybersecurity folks. Mm-hmm. And the bigger one to me is this: people don't solve the problem. If you don't have a good game plan, if you don't have a good policy, if you don't have good controls in place, all the people in the world are not going to keep the data protected.